Welcome to the fourth Futures lecture series. It is a hot afternoon. I'm so glad you're all here. I hope you have grabbed a bottle of water out there. My name is Nils Bubant, and I'm also happy to welcome you if you're watching this on live stream next door or on a podcast sometime later in cyberspace. I don't know about cyberspace, but I think the buzz in this room is extraordinary. It is the fourth Futures lecture, but I think it's the biggest ever. And it's extraordinary, I think, because we're honored today to be able to welcome an extraordinary guest speaker, Professor Bruno Lastour. Before I introduce him, let me say a little bit about the background for the event and about the program tonight. The Futures lecture series was created 2 years ago by the School of Culture and Society at Aarhus University, and its format is fairly simple. Bring in the best and most innovative scholars from the humanities and ask them to answer the biggest questions of all. What kind of world do we live in, and what kind of possible futures are out there for all of us? Finally, add two panelists or discussants who will push those questions, and in the end, hopefully, if there is time today too, we will put the questions to you, or rather allow you to put the questions to today's speaker. The aim is also simple, but actually also hard. It is to demonstrate that the time in which the humanities could afford to be passive is over. The world needs the humanities more than ever, but for the humanities to live up to that task, to grasp that possibility, they may have to transform themselves radically. I think no one is more eminently suited for this double task of assertion of relevance on the one hand and of remaking or rethinking than Bruno Lastour. For 4 decades, Professor Latour has urged the social and human sciences to rethink themselves, and he's one of the most influential philosophers in the world today. His influence, I think, is due to the fact that he's actually so much more than a philosopher. He's a sociologist of science, an anthropologist, a curator of exhibitions, and an activist. Bruno Lastour is professor at Sciences Po, the prestigious Paris Institute for Political Studies, where he's also scientific director of the Media Lab. Professor Latour has held honorary positions in the University of Amsterdam and London School of Economics. And in 2013, he was given the Holberg Prize for excellence in the humanities. Each of his more than 24 books has been groundbreaking in its own right, reshaping the way we in the social and human sciences understand and study technology, science, democracy, religion, modernity, the social, politics, earthworms, monkeys, humans, and more. Professor Latour's work is thoroughly innovative, consistently challenging, and frequently, actually, I find at least, witty, in spite of the seriousness of the themes that it addresses. And there's no way in which I could probably introduce you to the nuance and breadth of Professor Latour's work in a short introduction, if ever. So instead, I thought I would tell you a joke. It is a joke that my daughter, who's 11, taught to me, so if you wanted to be kind, you could pretend to find that it's funny. Anyway, here goes. A man walks into a bar. A large frog is attached to his head. It seems to grow from the man's head. "Oh my God," says the bartender. "How did that happen?" "Well," says the frog, "it began with a pain in the ass." It works slightly better in Danish when you say "en byld i røven." There's a melodicness to "en byld i røven," but a pain in the ass will work as well. A talking frog, a bartender who invokes a god in which he likely does not believe, and the possibility that humans are merely hemorrhoids in the backside of amphibians. I think there is no better way, more appropriate to introduce the philosophy of Professor Latour, and also the theme of his talk tonight. We live, one might say, in a world where frogs have begun to speak to nature. That mute entity of Enlightenment thought has begun unexpectedly and loudly to talk back to us. Rising temperatures, ocean acidification, freak storms, flash floods, unseasonably hot in Denmark and very cold in Paris, invasive species, climbing extinction rates, and climate refugees. Something clearly is being said here, but who speaks and what is being said? How should we reorient our concepts, our thinking, our methods in order to listen to this? Or are we better off doing what we've always done? This latter option, doing what we've always done, is the conventional option of the modern world, the world of realpolitik and real science. And yet, it is becoming harder to ignore the voices for these politics and sciences of the real. Take frogs, for instance. Amphibian populations around the world are plummeting. They're victims of a chytrid fungus carried by the African clawed frog, Sinopus laevis, if there are any biologists in here. The frog became a global species that was able to infect other amphibians because it is used as a pet and in the medical trade, in the medical research trade for pregnancy tests, for instance. The human-caused extinction rates of amphibians that are due to many other reasons than this, but this is part of it, is such that some scientists now worry that the extinction of amphibians might trigger a mass extinction event on a scale that is equivalent to the 5 others that have occurred in the Earth history in the last 500 million years. I think it is fair to say that humans really are a pain in the ass to frogs, and maybe their extinction will turn out to be a pain for us as well. Professor Latour's work has always taught us to rethink our thinking, to reset it, to listen to frogs and to other non-humans, to include them in our analysis of the present, of politics, and of the future. I think I can promise you that today will be an example of this. It is also, so I gather, a really unconventional presentation today, so I think you really have something to look forward to. The presentation is called Why Gaia is Not the Globe and Why Our Future Depends on Not Confusing the Two. Please help me in giving a warm hand and welcome to Professor Latour.